you. While we are taking you through the slides, please start putting in your questions into the Q&A section, into the chat, so that we will take it towards the end of the session. All right. So to begin with, I think a lot of you know about the Asia Gender Equality Fund that AVPN has launched recently. But we also wanted to talk to you a little bit quickly about the organization that we are. So next slide, please. Yeah, the next. So we are a network body of funders and resource providers, and we engage with organizations and resource providers across Asia. So this is the footprint that we have. We are very strong in 33 markets across Asia. In addition, we also engage with funders and resource providers that are based outside of Asia, essentially based in either the US or the Europe, but have an active interest of investing within Asia. Next slide, please. Now, the kind of organizations that are a part of our network. So as I mentioned, we engage with funders and resource providers. So we essentially engage with funders who deploy financial capital in the form of grant, debt, and equity, as well as human and intellectual capital into the impact space. So this leads to the kind of organizations that are part of our network. So they are impact funds, foundations, trust, corporate foundations, incubators, accelerators, service providers, family offices, universities, etc. So a large spectrum of organizations deploying financial, intellectual, and human capital into the impact space. Next slide, please. So a little bit of a recap of AVPN's journey into the philanthropic funds. So we started our first fund in 2020, and the intent was that we understood from our members, our funders, that they wanted to move beyond the immediate COVID recovery and start looking at a more long-term perspective of building in resilience within the sector, as well as looking at long-term solutions for the COVID pandemic. We began with a fund which was focused on Southeast Asia, and then we have broadened our focus geographically as well as thematically. So till date, we have had 8 philanthropic funds covering a wide variety of thematics, from last mile primary healthcare solutions to MNCH to COVID recovery, digital transformation, climate action, STEM, and the gender being the latest one. Given that we sit on a funders network, there are 20 funders who've been a part of our philanthropic funds as of now, and we've raised 13 million out of our 33 million targets that we have. We have shared the names of the funders that are part of our philanthropic funds as a funder, and you can see it's a wide spectrum of organizations ranging from international foundations to corporate foundations to also other international agencies as well. Next slide, please. So why are we deploying pool funds? As a network organization, why did we take the entire initiative of starting pool funds as well as philanthropic funds of our own? So we felt that as a network, we definitely have the strategic advantage of getting in insights and inputs from our members in terms of the challenges that we are facing, as well as an opportunity of shaping the collaborative philanthropy narrative, which is gaining momentum in Asia. We also saw that while there is a lot of conversation about trust-based philanthropy outside of Asia, there are very less initiatives or even conversations around trust-based philanthropy within Asia. So given the strategic position that we have as a network, we decided to take it on ourselves. And that is the entire story behind AVPN launching the funds. Now, whom do we support through the funds? Ishita, last slide, please. Yeah. Whom do we support through the funds? What are the kind of organization that AVPN essentially looks through the funds is in our work with impact organizations, we've realized that where the small and medium organizations really struggle in terms of having resilience while they attempt scale. And we've seen in the scenario like COVID that organizational resilience is quite key for impact organizations to ensure that the work that they do is sustainable and they themselves are also sustainable in the long run. So we essentially deploy capital to small and medium organizations. And the kind of funding that we give through our pooled funds is unrestricted funding. So in our work, again, with impact organization and funders, we've realized that where there is a lot of funding going into programmatic areas, unrestricted funding is again less. So by unrestricted funding, we mean the funding that is not essentially only aimed at the programmatic component, but also can be used for core support. That is into the indirect cost, building your organizational capacity, say starting an M&E vertical, or building your own capacity in terms of a tech team, etc. So it can be anything that is leading to strengthening your organizational capacity, and it's a form of core support. So this is the entire reason behind AVPN starting pooled funds, and also what we look at, and the how will, I think, be covered now further. Before that, I would like to hand over to my colleague Deb, who is from the AVPN Gender platform, and will take you through AVPN's work within gender. Yeah, thank you so much. Deb, over to you.
Thank you, Hero. Hi, everyone. My name is Deb from the AVPN Gender Platform team, and it's really wonderful seeing so many faces here representing the support and partnerships to advance gender equity. So as mentioned by Hero, we are a network of about 600 over funders and investors, of which 60% have declared gender as a priority. So our mission really with the gender platform is to mobilize financial, intellectual, and human capital to improve outcomes for women and girls in Asia. And we will do this by establishing gender equality as an intersection and not as an isolated theme. So how are we going to do this? Next slide, please. So research has demonstrated that in many of the critical challenges facing our world today, women and girls are often disproportionately affected. And at the same time, they hold central roles in creating solutions. So really, as the part of this, our team, it's really our goal to encourage funders to integrate a gender lens across all these thematic areas. So economic empowerment is a crucial area of which our platform really supports. So in a survey that we conducted, 67% of our platform members actually declared economic empowerment as a focus area and a priority area for them. Most especially in Asia, the ongoing trend for women's empowerment is ensuring economic empowerment. So most recently, the team has been working with partners within the subsets of women's economic empowerment to ensure women have access to finance, understanding the care economy and burden landscape, as well as women in leadership, to ensure that women across Asia can thrive and succeed. So I hope this little overview has given you a little understanding of where AVPN stands, as well as our focuses. So again, we really appreciate you coming forward to be part of this fund and to support women in their advancement. So I guess to speak more about the funds, I'll hand it over to my colleague Natasha to take you through. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Deb, and thank you, Hiral, for setting the context and for sharing a little bit about our work at AVPN. Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha. I'm from the Capital Mobilization team and also part of the implementing team of the Asia Gender Equality Pooled Fund. It's really so nice to see so many of you joining the webinar today. And we hope that you find the information that we'll be sharing useful. And please use this as an opportunity to ask us questions, and we'll be responding to them. So just building on what Hiral and Deb has mentioned, we've been launching the philanthropic pooled funds since 2020 and with across different thematic areas and different focus. And we're very happy to actually be launching the biggest fund yet, which is this $25 million fund on Asia Gender, called the Asia Gender Equality Pooled Fund, that is aimed at supporting nonprofit organizations that are working at addressing socioeconomic barriers and improving the economic development of women and girls in Asia. This is possible because of the support and the partnership that we have in place with our funders, the Chanel Foundation, Target Foundation, Gates Foundation, and we have a number of our AGN, so our Asia Gender Network ladies who've also supported this fund. So we've seen that there's a need on the ground, and the fund aims to address some of these needs that nonprofit organizations are facing. To speak a little bit about the fund, The fund is Asia focused, so we're looking at supporting nonprofits that are working in the target markets in Asia, that are working across improving women's economic empowerment in Asia, and that are looking at unrestricted funding to help strengthen the capacity of their own organizations in order for them to be able to continue doing their work, and really creating this pool of this mechanism that allows for collaborative philanthropy to happen through a model like the pooled fund. In terms of interventions, because this is quite broad, so please don't take the examples that are on screen as the parameters that we're looking at. We are all open to hearing what you're doing on the ground, how you've been working in your own way to improve women's economic outcomes. So just some examples that will help you understand a little bit about what this fund aims to support. So if you're in organizations that is enhancing access to various forms of capital, or you're providing capital to women, or you're providing support and services that will enhance the use of ICT for women and girls, initiatives within the care economy, such as affordable and accessible child elderly care to enable the participation of women in the paid workforce, increasing access to education of women and girls, and support for tracking public allocations for gender equality and women's empowerment. These are just examples. So if your solution or your intervention is not mentioned here, please do not feel like that's not going to be considered. We encourage everyone who feels that they're working within this space to please put in their application. Can we go to the next slide, please? So just to give you an overview of our fund management process and what this looks like. So we have a 4-part fund management process, starting with really working with our funders to design what the theory of change would look like, what are we trying to address, what are the outcomes that we want the fund to achieve, working with them to look at what are some target markets that we can address through this first round of the fund. Obviously, we know that this is this challenge is present in many markets, and not only the 12 markets that we're looking to address, but how we're trying to address that is really by looking at working with our funders to really look at what can we do now with the resources that we have at this stage, and what can we do later on as we raise more funds for this gender fund. So really setting that up and putting that into the grant management system, which we then pull out a call for applications on the 21st of March. So if you have had the opportunity to look at that, to sign up and to register, that's the grant management system that you'll be using to put in your application. Then we've had info sessions on the 19th of Jan, and this is our second info session. And the call for applications will go on till the 31st of March. Following that, we have an eligibility review that is done with our partner. So we have TechSoup. I'm sure some of you that have started the process, you've seen that there's another step that we've implemented to really help us streamline the process of eligibility review. So this way we will be able to get a quick verification of your nonprofit legal registration. Following which we will do an eligibility check just to make sure that you fit the criteria, the work that you're doing is aligned to what the fund's thematic focus or impact focus is. Then we move you on to the round 1 review. So the round 1 review will be done by experts. So these are experts in their field and will range from experts in gender, in the different markets, and in somebody that has worked or experience in the funding or philanthropic space. So we have this group of experts that we can then bring together to help review the applications. And then the organizations that would have been reviewed and have maybe scored higher in terms of the different weightage, criteria, assessment, that process that has been put in place, they will proceed to the next round. The next round is really with more senior members from the community with the different expertise that they bring to the table. And then we have further conversations and deliberations. And then we bring it up with our grant committee, who consists of our funders. So we have our funders who sit on the grant committee, and also senior management from AVPN. Following which, once the final list of organizations has been approved, then we go into the due diligence process. And then we go into setting up grantee agreements once the due diligence process has been passed. And then we have a monitoring framework that we set in place as well. And then the funds disbursement for this round is going to take place in June 2023. Then we move on to the monitoring and evaluation for the first check-in. So usually how we're monitoring our grants, or how we've been doing that for all of our previous funds, is we have a progress check-in on the 6th month. So this really is to work with you to understand how have you been utilizing the funds? Were you facing any issues? Looking at what has the impact been in terms of the work that you're doing and its alignment with the fund, and just to hear from you on what are the different, did you need to pivot, or did you have to use this for different reasons? Did you have to use the funds for different reasons? And really creating a space for open and transparent conversations to take place. So this will happen on the first check-in, which is on the 6th month, and then the second check-in will again take place on the 12th month. Following which, all of this data that is collected is then summarized and collated into a funders report that we then share with our funders of the fund. Can we go to the next slide, please? So in terms of the key application timeline of this fund, so now we're at the stage where we have launched the call for applications, and we're also having our final information session today. We have a deadline for applications on 31st of March, and then following which the successful grantees will be informed in May and June. And the funds disbursement will be in June. Just zoning in a little bit on the eligibility and the key criteria for this fund. So for this fund, you would need to be a registered nonprofit organization or a charity. And what we also are opening up this round is really inviting intermediaries that are nonprofit, that are working with impact organizations within the focus area of this fund. So we do believe that intermediaries will be able to do the work, amplify the work as they're supporting organizations that are working at improving economic outcomes for women. So we really want to invite intermediary organizations that are nonprofit to also apply. You would need to be operational in at least one of the 12 target markets, which are Japan, China, South Korea, Cambodia, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, and India. You should not be the following, which is a religious organization, and you should not apply as a consortium. So only a single application is allowed. Also cleared from all global sanctions lists, nor blacklisted by any UN or international agency. In terms of governance and ask, we do require that you submit 2 years of track record of financial accounts, which is audited, a track record of default tax payment, grant size range from USD 100K to 500K. And AVPN will hold the right to amend the grant dispersed. And the reason behind this is because we are also, for this grant, we are having a mix of a single year funding as well as multi-year funding. So that would mean that if you're applying for 100K and you're applying it for 1 year grant, but through our conversations with you, if we feel that you have a scalable a solution or intervention, and we would like to see you scale your solution, then we could have conversations of supporting, giving you a multi-year funding of 100K for 3 years. So this is how we will be having conversations around the grant ask, depending on your solution, depending on the market, depending on its scalability, and the need for the next 3 years, for example. So we've given a range, but it could also mean that we would be providing both single year funding, but also multi-year funding, depending on your application. And in terms of impact areas, so really, if you're working in any of these areas or beyond, but that are addressing gender equality and women economic empowerment, then you will be eligible to apply for this fund. Okay, I will pass it to my colleague Zahao to walk you through the application portal.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. I'll take you through how you can apply for the gender fund itself. So after the presentation today, we'll be circulating these slides with you, and they would have the step-by-step process by which you can apply for the gender fund. So step one is to visit this link here, avpn-cp.employer.cloud, and register for an account on AVPN's grant management system by clicking login or sign up. Step two, you would have to register for a new account and fill in your details as shown here and click get started. So it would just be some basic details like your first name, last name, email address, password. If you have applied for funds that AVPN has run previously and you have an existing account with us, simply log into your existing account. Next, you'll be prompted to create either an individual or organization account. And I want to emphasize this for you to please create an organization account on the portal so that your application is tied to your organization and not to you as an individual. For users that have existing accounts with us, you may skip this step. Next, once you're logged in, click on the Publish Rounds tab and go to the nonprofit verification form and click View Details. In this round for the Gender Fund, we are working with a due diligence partner, TechSoup, to help verify the nonprofit status of your organizations. Next slide, please. So how we're doing this is through the TechSoup validation token system. And what you need to do is to click on the TechSoup Global Network link. This would take you to a page where you would select your headquarter country and language and click enter. Next. If you have an existing account with TechSoup, simply log into your TechSoup account and retrieve your validation token. If not, please create a new TechSoup account for your organization if you're not signed up with them already. Next, complete the sign up process for your TechSoup account. Simply fill in the details on the form as shown. Next. After you have created your account, on your TechSoup account homepage, click on Validation Token to see the organizations that you are affiliated with. You can register for a new organization if you haven't already done so. So as you can see here on the screenshot, there isn't any organizations that my test profile is associated with. So I'll click Add an organization to register a new one. Next. You'll be prompted to complete the organization registration form. So provide the details of the organization that you're working with and complete this form. Next. One of the steps involved in this process is to provide your organization's legal documents, such as your legal registration and articles of incorporation. Please take note that the validation process can take up to 7 to 10 business days. Next, you may find that your organization has already been registered with TechSoup. In this case, do check within your team and organization if you have someone who is already registered with TechSoup, and you can retrieve your validation token from there. So as you can see here in the screenshot, we have the organization name Asian Venture Philanthropy Network, or AVPN, with the tax ID accordingly. So that means this organization is already validated on the TechSoup database, and we simply need to retrieve the validation token from someone else in the organization that has access to it. Next, after your organization is validated, go back to your TechSoup account page, click on the validation token tab, and copy your validation token to your clipboard or use the shortcut Control-C. So this is what the validation token looks like. You see on the screenshot, and what has been underlined and pointed out in the arrow in red. This is what the validation token would look like. So copy that. Next, go back to the nonprofit verification form on the AVPN Grant Management Portal and submit your validation token here. and you can use the shortcut Ctrl+V and click Submit. Next. Now you can return to the application form itself and click Apply to begin your application. Next. So this is briefly a brief snapshot of what the application form would look like. Do note that the application form questions is circulated in our collateral and on our Gender Fund webpage as well. So you can refer to that if you want to see the full list of questions. Do note that any point in time throughout your application, you can download a PDF version of the application form as well through the portal itself. So you can see on the top right of the screenshot, there's this circular button with an arrow pointing down that I've called out as PDF. So you can click that to download a PDF version of the application form. Throughout the process, as you're filling up your application, you can click Save to submit your work and submit after you have completed your application. Just a reminder for everyone to submit your applications by 11:59 p.m. Singapore time on 31st March of this year. Do note that we, in this current process, we will be having the nonprofit verification and the application form itself, but you can do both things in parallel. So as your organization is being validated by TechSoup, you can also get started on your application form. So you don't need to wait for your organization to get validated before you start your application. And if the validation process for your organization is taking longer than the 7 to 10 business days as stated, do reach out to us at funds@avpn.asia and we'll connect with you separately to help speed up the process. That's all for the demo, and back to you, Annette.
Thank you. Before we open up to the questions from the attendees here, we thought it would be helpful to just go through the frequently asked questions and see if that would help address any of the questions that you might have. So starting with the question around unrestricted funding. So even though we say unrestricted funding, and as Hiral shared at the beginning, we still ask the organizations to outline the interventions that would help achieve the fund's thematic focus. So if you're in your application form, you will see there is a question about how the unrestricted funding will help you in achieving the impact of your work, and we want to see the alignment of that to the thematic focus of the fund. So there was another question that I'll also take here, which is what percentage of the funds is unrestricted. So this is 100% unrestricted fund, and it is up to you. We want to hear from you on how you would need to use these funds to help either scale your work, continue your work, pivot, and use it for core support in whatever way that you think you would need to, in order for you to help, to achieve the outcomes that is in alignment with that the fund is hoping to achieve. And similarly, what does core support mean? Really looking at all of the different things that I've mentioned, but just adding a few here, like infrastructure support activities, investing in fundraising capacity, for example, organizational capacity building, human resource, office rent, transportation. So it's up to you to let us know through your application what is the best way that you would want to use these funds. What grant size can the applicants ask for? So nonprofit organizations can apply for grants ranging from 100K to 500K. Also, like I've mentioned, we will be doing both a single year and a multi-year funding approach this time. And we want to be able to, work with you to understand what is the best way for us to structure the funds to the particular organization. So it could mean that there could be a possibility that if your ask is 100K for 1 year, then we would give you 100K for 1 year. But if we feel that your organization is scalable, the impact works scalable, then we could have a conversation with you to see if you would be able to absorb or take in 100K for 3 years. And the maximum that we are giving out for this round is, in terms of the multi-year funding, is for 3 years. So there would be a range, and there would be a mix of both single year and multi-year funding. In terms of registration in the target market, or whether you simply have to have operations in that target market. So we have mentioned that you can be registered in any market as long as you have operations in the priority markets of the fund that have been highlighted earlier. Next slide, please. Would it be possible if we apply for this grant and co-fund apply for other awards? Yes, it's up to you to seek additional funding. This fund is specifically for women's economic empowerment. And so if you want to seek additional funding, you can do so. Can a nonprofit organization apply in collaboration with other entities, such as for-profit or social enterprises? So in terms of the application, you can only apply as a single entity that is a nonprofit organization. This fund is philanthropic in nature and will only be providing grant funding. But what we do encourage applicants to demonstrate in the application form are the partnerships that you have in place that really shows how scalable you are, what are the partnerships that you have set in place with governments, with other entities, with other CSOs, intermediaries, etc., in the jurisdiction or in the market that you're operating in. So there are specific questions where you can highlight the partners that you will be working with for the particular intervention. How do you define small and medium organizations? So at a minimum, I know that this is a difficult question to answer because there's different definitions of what small and medium mean. And I think for us at AVPN and together with our funders, we're looking for at least 2 years in operation because we need to have your financial audited documents submitted with an operating budget of a minimum USD 250K. I know that I saw another question on the chat where someone mentioned that because of COVID or because you're a smaller or an organization that's relatively new, that might be sort of a little bit of a hindrance to the application process. And what I would say is we keep this as a benchmark, but it's always determined on a case-by-case basis. So if you feel like you have a strong intervention and you have a healthy, I want to say like a healthy financial, you're in a healthy financial state and you're able to absorb the funds that comes in, then I would recommend that you put it in and we will then have a conversation with you. We will review it internally and understand your operations better so that we can make a more informed decision. Can an intermediary organization apply? Like I've mentioned, if you're a registered nonprofit intermediary and you're working with organizations that are in the space that are working towards improving women's economic outcomes in the target markets, then we encourage you to apply. And then we'll also ask you how to articulate in your work with these organizations and your efforts to continue to build and grow these organizations. Can we go to the next slide? Are big international non-governmental organizations like UN agencies eligible to apply? So again, if your organization is a registered nonprofit organization, then you'll be eligible to apply. So there's, like we've shared the set of eligibility criteria, so we would leave it up to you to evaluate, but we've kept it quite broad that if you're a registered nonprofit organization, then you can apply. What types of documentation do you accept as proof of nonprofit or charities? So this would be your legal documentation that it has been verified by national authorities of your country or market. What is the duration of implementation? How much is the allowable support cost? If approved, what are the reporting requirements? So the fund aims to provide single and multi-year funding from 1 to 3 years. This will be decided based on your application form, the review process, and then a conversation with you to really determine what would be the best approach and how can we structure this better to help you achieve your outcomes as well. And then also depending on your needs, your scale-up plans, and internal deliberation of the application. And if you are chosen as a recipient or a grantee, we will work with you to determine any necessary reporting requirements and milestones and provide assistance as needed. So these are the sub-thematic focus of the fund, but really these are examples of like I shared earlier, the type of organizations or the type of work that we would like to support. But again, it's not limited to the following list. And who are the target beneficiaries of the fund? Women and girls from the following target markets. Again, Japan, South Korea, China, Cambodia, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, and India. These are some application questions. So while applying, do I need to create an individual account or an organization account on the portal? Please create an organization account on the portal. I think Zahao has shared that during his when he was walking through the slides. How can we send documents and attachments? Is there a special email address for sending the required documents? So all of your documents, all of your necessary documents, you'll be able to upload them through the online application portal. And in terms of how the applications will be assessed, we will be bringing in experts, external reviewers from the AVPN member community that represents the different markets and bring in different expertise to help evaluate that. And the applications will be assessed along the following lines. So impact, whether the intervention will improve women's economic empowerment through the proposed solution. Innovation, whether the project will tackle the issue it seeks to address in a new and creative way. Reach, how the project will impact women if successful and the extent of impact on their economic empowerment and growth. Scalability, if successful, the expected outcomes of the project in 5 years and whether the project can serve as model for other communities. And feasibility, whether the project has been well-developed, realistic plan of execution, and whether you have identified the right partners for implementation. Okay, great. And if you have any further questions, please contact us through funds@avpn.asia. I think we can address some of the questions, so I'll pass it to Zahao to help moderate that this discussion.
Yep, thanks, Nat. There's this question on funding advocacy work. So are we looking at funding gender advocacy?
So through this fund, at this stage, we're not looking at funding advocacy work.
Okay. Next question. So for the grant size of 100K to 500K, is this per year or over 2 years?
So this will depend on, like I mentioned, some of the key criteria, the application form, what are your needs, what are your scale-up plans, and depending on how you, or the conversation that we would have with you to see how best to structure it. So it can mean that we could give the fund for a year or for up to 3 years.
Okay, next question. One attendee has said that they receive philanthropic funds through their 501c3 in the US, but work with a private limited entity in Singapore for executing the program. So is it fine for them to apply as the 501c3 in the US and work with the implementation partner in Singapore? Or should they apply directly from the private limited in Singapore if that is easier or better?
Yeah, I can take this question, Zahao. So the organization essentially that is applying needs to be a non-profit organization. And if the organization that is applying as a non-profit has a for-profit entity, which is a part of that very organization in another geography, that is all right. We will, however, assess it on a case-by-case basis. With regard to the second part of the question, that can the for-profit entity in Singapore apply for convenience? That is a no. We will only be taking applications from organizations that are registered as non-profits.
Thanks, Hiral. Is there any maximum budget that we're looking at for the organizations?
Do you mean the operating budget, the ceiling for that? We don't have a maximum, like we don't have a ceiling in terms of the operating budget, because we do want to see, for instance, if it's a bigger organization, if they are proposing maybe a different innovative solution in a different market, and they might be fundraising for that particular solution. So I think in terms of operating budget, I think we're keeping it quite broad, and we would like to see what's coming in from the markets.
Thanks, Nat. Let me just go through some more of the questions. I see that some of the questions have been addressed through the FAQs and the sharing from Nat and Hiral. So let me just scroll through a bit more. There's one question on co-funding. So will co-funding be expected? Not sure what is meant by that.
I think we are not, so co-funding isn't expected like in terms of like a matching grant that you'll have to raise given you get an AVPN grant. That isn't a condition, but we'll definitely look at the financial health of the organization when the application is submitted to understand how the organization is placed in terms of sustainability as well.
Yep, thanks, Hiral. Another question. Out of the assessment criteria, which one do you consider the most important?
I think it has to be a combination of all. We are looking at initiatives that, as Nat covered in her slide, the basis on which they will be assessed. So it isn't one particular, but it's a combination of all of the various points that Nat covered in her slide. Nat, would you like to add more to that?
No, I think that's good. I think for you to know that these are the criteria, or these are the sort of the assessment criteria, and the questions that you will see in the application form have also been asked and structured in a way where you're responding to the different categories or the different criteria that have been highlighted.
Thanks, Nat. I'm just looking through the questions again. Do we allow for the recipients of the grant to do sub-granting?
Given that intermediaries are also an eligible organization type, we aren't putting any condition. It's up to the organization as to how they would want to use the funds.
The only thing that I would add is to make sure that your jurisdiction allows for that to happen. So in certain markets, you're as a nonprofit organization, you're not allowed to sub-grant. So it's that is also a factor that we will need to look at.
Thank you. Next question. I've seen a couple of questions relating to funding organizations based in Hong Kong. So are we looking to support organizations applying from Hong Kong?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Moving through these. Just trying to find a question that hasn't been covered. Do we have an estimate of how many organizations we're looking to fund?
At this point, we don't have an estimate. As we've always been doing with our funds, we don't want to restrict the numbers in terms of agreeing on how many numbers of organizations we want to support, but we do want to see what's coming in and what's out there, and then take a decision depending on the amount that we're going to be dispersing.
Thank you. There's this question on the nature of the project. So can the project consist of a combination of several sub-projects across different locations or teams, or should it just be one project altogether with the same team, same location, and same group of beneficiaries?
Hiral, do you want to take that, or should I?
I think essentially when we are looking at an application, while we are looking at an organization in terms of the organizational health, the team, etc., that runs the organization, we also look at a particular solution that you're trying to attempt through a particular problem. So I would say that in terms of the application, put in your best bet in terms of the solution that you would like to highlight. And also in the other sections, you can mention about the other related work that you are kind of taking up. in terms of assessment, we would like to see the particular one particular solution or one particular project that you would want to showcase as the best bet.
Gotcha. Thanks, Hiral. There was a question on using the budget for the purchase of capital expenditures, like things like laptops. So if they use the budget to purchase laptops or to support the impact at the end of the program, is the asset able to be used for the organization, or does it have to be returned to AVPN? So I can answer that. The answer is no. Please feel free to keep any of the capital expenditure that you have used for the grant, be it as laptops for your own organization or for the end beneficiaries that you're working with. Okay. I've got a question on M&E. What is the role of the monitoring and evaluation? Is the project evaluated or the organization? I can take that as well. So we're looking at evaluating both the project and understanding the work that your organization is doing. So if you look at the application form itself, you can see that there's a section asking about some details of your organization, as well as the intervention that your organization is working on. Yep. Okay, I see there's a lot of questions that have come in, of which some we have addressed previously already. Just give me a moment to look through some of these questions. For Nat and Hiral, will we be considering the number of beneficiaries that the intervention will be having? Number of end beneficiaries. I'm assuming that's what they mean.
It will be good to understand the scale of the project in terms of the number of lives that are touched, beneficiaries. But having said that, that won't be a determining criteria in terms of assessing the application.
Yep. Thank you. One attendee has asked, they are a Section 8 in India, but they don't have FCRA. However, they have a charity that is registered in the UK. Can they apply through their UK charity?
Yeah, I can take this. I think there's a number of questions that are along the same lines, which is on the registration. So definitely you will not be, if you're applying from India, you would need an FCRA. That's mandatory. So if you are, we would recommend then for you to apply from your UK charity and then mention how you will be using the funds to support your work in India. So I hope this has answered some of the other questions as well in terms of the HQ versus the operational markets. So I think it's important to note that you have to be a non-profit entity. We will be, this is one of the main criteria, is that we will be doing a thorough check to make sure that you're legally registered non-profit in whichever market that you're headquartered in. Then we will also be checking on your rights to operate in the target markets. So that's another aspect as well. And then you will then need to sort of mention how in your application form, how the funds, even though it comes to your, for instance, in this case, your UK entity, how will that be used to support your work in India or in the target markets that you're working in.
Thanks, Nat. There's a question on currency exchange rates and discrepancies. So how would currency exchange rate and discrepancies be addressed throughout the course of the funding? I can take this question. Because we are providing multi-year funding or in different tranches, so we'll be taking the spot rates of the, let's say, the currency pair as of the day of the disbursement. Okay, let me look through some of the questions. Then
there's just one question here again about the registration. Sorry, I just want to address this. Somebody has asked that they're locally registered, but part of a network of offices with headquarters in different countries. How do they indicate the headquarter location? Would it be where they're based or the global headquarter? What I want to stress is that through these funds, we're looking at finding local organizations. So if you're locally based in that operating market or in that target market, and you're a nonprofit, legally registered nonprofit in that market, so do put in your application based on that aspect, and we will evaluate accordingly. So I think we just wanted to make sure that we're also being inclusive and opening it up to other organizations that may be headquartered in markets other than the target markets.
Yep. Thanks, Nat. There's a question on submitting multiple proposals. So are they allowed to submit 2 proposals with different focus areas but in the same country? The answer is no. We'll be only accepting 1 application per organization. Yep. So for everyone who's asked if they can submit multiple applications, just to re-emphasize, we are only accepting 1 application per organization. Nat, Hiral, do you see any questions that you would like to address in the Q&A?
There's this question on the organization is locally registered but part of a network of offices with headquarters in a different country. I think you covered it, Nat, right?
Yeah, I just covered that.
There's a question about pre-feasibility. Should there be any pre-feasibility done in regard to the project? So can they do like a scoping study before embarking on the intervention itself?
As part of the intervention, I would say yes. If it's going to help you understand maybe the particular market or the beneficiary group that you're trying to address, then a scoping study would also be applicable as part of this application. I hope that was the question that you were asking.
Thank you, Nat. There's a question on covering multiple markets under 1 proposal. So can organizations write 1 proposal that covers multiple markets using a regional approach? The answer is yes. You can indicate the different markets and impact areas in your 1 proposal from your organization. There's a question again about social enterprises, commercial entities working with charities. So what if you are a social enterprise that is headquartered in India, but with charity status in the US/Australia? Can they leverage charity status to apply?
I think we've shared this before, that the organization that applies has to be a non-profit organization. And the for-profit entity, if they have, it can be of the same organization. And again, we'll mostly take it on a case-by-case basis.
Gotcha. There's a question about 501c3 NPOs only being validated by TechSoup as we're trying to apply. So if TechSoup is not validating, are we going to be disqualified? So if you are not able to validate your organization within the 7 to 10 business days that we have shared with you, then reach out to us at funds@avpn.asia, and we'll try to expedite that process with TechSoup. There's a question on, we'd like to share the concern regarding the info we need to complete the proposal relating to diversity of the management team, particularly for data on the composition and minority of LGBTQ. Since this is personal privacy details, what is your suggestion on this? If we feel that these are details that are of concern, then I think you can reach out to us separately and we'll take that offline. There's a question on monitoring and evaluation again. Will monitoring and evaluation by the organization itself, can that be part of the funding activity? Yeah, it can be for sure. Okay, there's a question on different donors defining operational costs differently. The application asks for a breakdown of operational costs. So does AVPN have a set definition for this? So during the FAQ section of the presentation, we have a breakdown of what AVPN defines as core support. So after the presentation, we'll circulate the slide deck and you can refer to that set of definitions for that. There's a question on using baselines and endlines for measuring and showcasing impact. Would that be mandatory for the gender fund?
No, so as Hiral has mentioned, it'll be good to understand, but we are not using that as a mandatory sort of criteria to assess your suitability for this fund.
Gotcha. There's a question on supporting businesses for women groups. Can the AVPN fund support new business for women groups that existed, but the business didn't go too well? So can they fund new initiatives and new businesses which has greater potential? I think for that, it depends entirely on what the nature of the business is and if you meet the eligibility criteria. And if your intervention is aligned with the impact areas as mentioned during the presentation.
There's this question on the second and third round of review. Is there going to be an interview, and are you going to review the original proposal that is submitted? So we might come back to you in the second round with a few additional questions that we would have on the organization, on the solution, and to understand your organization as well as the solution better. But there, we will be using the original proposal to kind of understand, and then there's a second round of questions further, then delve deeper. Yeah.
Yep, thanks, Sarah. I don't see any new questions and we're close to time. So maybe Nat, Hiral, do you want to end it off here?
Yes, no, thank you so much, Zahal. And thank you so much, everyone, for all of your questions and for your interest in this fund. We're very excited to receive your applications and to see all of the amazing work that you're doing. And I also just wanted to add that, you know, we want to make this process as easy and smooth for you. So please let us know if you're facing any challenge in the application process and where we can come in and support you. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your interest. And yes, we look forward to receiving your applications. Please remember it's the 31st of March, so do put in your applications before then. Hiral, do you want to end us off?
No, that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. And we will come back to you with the recording as well as the slides. And I would say, please watch out our webpage and keep following it for any additions in the FAQs, etc. that happen. So we'll take in the questions that have come in and also update the FAQ sheet on our webpage so that we are also covering what was asked in the session today. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and all the best for your applications.